Hey everybody, Scout Crafty here again. I have a really nice Craftsman masonry hammer I picked up. Just beautiful lines to it. Let's take a look. Let's see what we can do with it. Bring it back to new. Now I picked this hammer up a couple months ago, and I have to say I paid a lot of money for this hammer. I paid $16, and for a used masonry hammer, I can buy practically a new one for it. But when I saw this, the lines on this hammer are just absolutely gorgeous. When a tool and die maker makes a tool, a lot of times the designers will sketch something out what they want, and then they'll draw it up and give it to a prototyper, and he'll carve out a model out of wood, and if it passes, then they'll make a mold out of it. They'll stamp it out. They make tools and dies to make these hammers, and whoever designed this hammer did a really nice job, and I'll show you why. It's just the balance of this hammer is fantastic. It's 16 ounces. And it's made, it says obviously Craftsman. Craftsman didn't make their own tools. What Craftsman did was they farmed it out to like Vaughan or Estwing or some other American manufacturer who would make the tools and put under their specifications. But I don't know what year this is. This got to be 30, 40 years old or whatever. But it's just a beautiful, the lines on it's really nice. Now, it has a wooden plug in here, which I find amazing because that's probably for shock absorption. Probably had something to do with the design of the hammer. But this was all painted here. You could see it was like a blue or an aqua teal. The same with under here was painted. And we're going to bring it back. We're going to make it look exactly the same. So you've seen me do this before. I don't want to waste a lot of your time, but just remember what this looks like because all these surfaces will really come up nice. I could see it. Okay, let's get started. Now, I learned my lesson a long time ago about not taping up the handle. It's the worst way to really screw up a restoration. So I taped it up, take it over to the wire brush, and you know, this is where you get off all that rust, scale, and everything, and I'll be able to determine what steps we have to take next. This is always very relaxing. I love this little wire brush. Over 10 minutes on the wire brush, you can see that's how we do our evaluation. Now we don't have to look at any, we can see through the rust and everything. We got rid of it all. We can see what we need to do. Now you can see the square of this. You got a little bit of chipping here. Obviously the edges around here are a little bit finagled. So see, we got a big chip there. So we're going to have to take this to a belt sander, get all this off because buffing will not take that out. This is a smooth area, got a little chip over there to address. The top of it here, we're going to have to do something with this. Obviously, you know, that don't look too great. This top here will come out nice, but the edge here, you can see the edge, that's all banged up a little bit. Let me see if I can get the focus. There you go, you can see that. We're going to have to make a whole new edge here. And again, not to mess with the temper. The rest of it looks good. We got the lettering. Got all that out of the lettering, all that crud and everything, so you can see it's nice and sharp. That'll come out nice with the buffing. So let's get started with that. Now, when we're working on this little 1-inch Grizzly belt sander, it's important to remember, see those belts in the upper right-hand side? I don't get rid of any of my belts because if you wear out a coarse belt, it becomes a medium belt, you know, so what we're doing here is we're going through with the coarse belt. You could see by the amount of sparks. And again, there's no heat. There's very little heat with a belt sander, but there are some sparks. And after we go with the coarse belt, we'll switch over to a fine belt. And you see there's less sparks here. And with this fine belt, we go over the entire hammer again, getting out most of the scratch marks that we did with the coarser grit belt. And then we go again, we work our way down in grit until it's basically, you get a really nice finish from this little belt sander. Now we finished with the belt sander, and this is the finish you get from a belt sander. We went, as you see, the different belt grades. It looks good now. Now we're going to take it to the buffer and get out all this, and then we'll paint in here. Almost done. Now, when we go over to the buffing wheel, we use the coarse compound, and that'll get out all the minor scratches and whatnot that we had from the belt sander. And again, it's important to always keep the part moving. You don't want to lose the temper, so you don't want to get it too warm. You'll feel if it's getting too warm. Just keep it moving, go to different areas of the hammer if it starts to warm up, and then run it under some cool water to cool it down if you have to. Believe it or not, the longest part of this whole restoration was taping up the hammer. It's pretty hard to get around the nooks and crannies. We did it. We wiped it down with some denatured alcohol. We're going to spray it right now. Here we're just using some Regal Red to spray the areas that aren't taped up. We just finished painting. We're at the furnace. We built a little box around it. So now that it's baking, the paint will bake, and it's about 130, 140 degrees of circulating hot air. And in a couple hours that'll be really well. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're just going to address this little plug they have, this wooden plug, and we're using a pipette here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some linseed oil and drop it onto this wood. Now it's only about an inch, this wooden plug that's in here for vibration reasons, but it is dried out, especially after having it over the furnace. So we're going to put in some linseed oil, and I'm going to speed up the camera just to show you how quickly that linseed oil would absorb, even though it's only an inch big. Now you can see we really flood this area with linseed oil. Now you can see the bubbling action here as the linseed oil is actually drawn into the plug, and within a couple minutes it will be all absorbed. Okay, it's been 10 minutes and you can see it's all absorbed into the wood, the end grain, and that'll keep absorbing until it looks almost dry, and then I'll reapply. So that's how we're going to treat that top wood plug. Now, if you remember what it looked like when we first started, now here's what it looks like now. Okay, we're finished. Well, the paint is all dried up, and the last time I did this, I overexposed it a little bit with this fluorescent light, so I'm going to cut it off and describe what we finished it with. Okay, now we just have one compact fluorescent. Now, you could see here the lettering came out really nice. The polish came out good. All them chips, them little chips there are all gone. We painted again where it was painted before. I think it gives a nice contrast to it. Really nice hammer. The polish came out really good. There's that wooden plug absorbed the linseed oil. So, and the handle we did with my mix of 50/50 Vaseline mineral oil. This will dry in another day or two. I just did it 5 minutes ago, so it looks so shiny, but gives it a real nice feel, not slippery. So that's it. We finished this Craftsman Masonry hammer. Really enjoyed this little restoration. I knew this hammer would come out good because it's just such a beautiful design. Hope you enjoyed it, and take care. Have a nice day.